The Lord is my peace. Daniel, a man greatly beloved. This story teaches us that God gives peace to those who love him, even when times are hard. One day, King Nebuchadnezzar took over Jerusalem and brought some people with him to his kingdom, the kingdom of Babylon, to be slaves. Daniel and his friends were taken with them. King Nebuchadnezzar worshipped idols. He did not believe in God. One day the king asked the master of the servants to choose the best youths from those who came from Jerusalem and present them to the king. They must be strong young men, good-looking, smart, and educated with the ability to serve in the king's palace. The king wanted them to learn the language and the books of the country. The king even promised to serve them the king's delicious food and wine every day for 3 years of training, so that after the 3 years they might be able to serve the king. Among the men that were chosen were Daniel and his 3 friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, who were strong in their faith in God. They always obeyed God and made him happy. The first thing the master of the servants did was change their name from Daniel to Belshazzar, and his 3 friends were named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then the master of the servants served the young men the food of the king, meat and wine. The king's food was used in worshiping of idols. One of God's commandments is, "You shall not worship idols." Daniel, being a man of God, knew that by eating the king's food, he would be disobeying God's commandment. As the Holy Bible says, but Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Daniel chapter 1, verse 8. Daniel bravely asked the master of the servants if he and his friends could only eat food, vegetables, and drink only water. God blessed Daniel for his faithfulness, and God worked in the master of the servant's heart and allowed him to like Daniel. The master of the servants agreed, but was afraid that the king would notice. If they became weak and he was afraid, he would get in trouble by the king. Daniel convinced the master of the servants to test them for 10 days. And after the 10 days of eating only vegetables and water, the king's servant would see how they looked. After 10 days, Daniel and his friends looked better and stronger than the other men who ate the king's food. The master of the servants decided to only feed them vegetables and water from that time on. In the end, after the king finished their 3 years of training, everyone presented themselves to the king. After seeing them, the king found that Daniel and his friends were the best and the most knowledgeable people that he had ever met. Because of their faithfulness, God continued to bless them. God rewarded them with knowledge, skills, and wisdom. Daniel was even able to explain dreams with God's help. One day, King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that disturbed him very much. He called all his wise men and asked them to tell him the dream, interpret it. Of course, they were not able to do so. Daniel was a man of prayer and loved God. He knew God was always with him, and he gave him peace. He went to the king and witnessed to God in front of the king that only he knows the dream, and that God allowed him to know the dream. He told the king about the dream and what it meant. The king was amazed and said, "Truly your God is the God of gods, the Lord of kings, and a revealer of secrets." Daniel chapter 2, verse 47. Many years passed, and Daniel became an old man. Another king named Darius ruled. He appointed Daniel as one of the 3 governors because he knew Daniel was very wise. Daniel was better than all of the other rulers. The king thought Daniel should rule over the entire kingdom. The other rulers became jealous of Daniel. They went to the king and asked him to sign a decree that whoever worships another god than the king would be put in the den of lions. Daniel heard about the decree. Because he was faithful to God, Daniel would never worship any god other than our true God. Daniel prayed to God. He continued to pray to God without hiding, 3 times every day. The people saw him praying, and he was put in the den of lions. God sent an angel to close the lion's mouth and save him. The king rejoiced when he saw Daniel alive, for he loved him. He witnessed in front of all that Daniel's God is the true God. Another time, a king wanted Daniel to worship an idol named Bel and offered him food. Daniel refused and told him that he only worshipped God, the creator of heaven and earth. He told him that it is man-made and does not drink or eat. He came up with an idea to prove that this to the king witness to the Lord. The king had the priests of Bel prepare food for the idol, place it in front of it, and seal the room with the king's seal to make sure no one comes in the middle of the night to take it. If the food is still there in the morning, the priest of Bel will put to death. If not, Daniel will. Daniel asked his servants to sift ashes throughout the temple in front of the king before he sealed it. The next morning, the king did not find the food they placed. However, Daniel showed him the footsteps of the ground. The king then found out that the priests of Bel had secret doors where they came through and ate the food. The king punished the priests of Bel and gave the idol to Daniel, who destroyed it. Daniel witnessed to God in times of tribulation, and God loved him and gave him the wisdom and peace.